You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, and welcome back, Ameena. How are you?
Good, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so delightful to have my buddy in Dental Business Mastery, Ameena Basile. It's a pleasure having you every single time. So we are in mid-December at the moment. Everyone is thinking about what we've achieved so far in 2024. How are we going to do things differently in 2025, if we're going to do anything differently at all? You and I have both moved through this space when we were working in dental practices and managing dental practices. We also do it now with Dental Business Mastery as well. And our minds always come back to those magnificent questions by Sandy Roth, which are going to help direct this conversation and this contemplation that we're encouraging dental practices to do. Those questions, we repeat them over and again because repetition leads to learning. Question number 1, where have we been? Question number 2, where are we now? Question number 3, where are we going? Question number 4, how are we going to get there? Question number 5, what role will each one of us play in getting there? And question number 6 is, how are we going to track that we're getting there? And so over the next 4 weeks, to take us through to mid-January next year, 2025, we are going to be asking 4 of those key questions. The where have we been? So what has 2024 meant for us? Where are we going is going to be the second week, which is what goals have we got for 2025? And then the third week is how are we going to get there? What plan are we going to use? But then week number 4 is going to be what role will each one of us play in getting there? Because it takes more than just the practice owner or manager to get there. It takes every team member to be on board with it as well. And quite often, that's the clincher that's often missed. We've got all these very firm plans in place, but the individual team members don't understand exactly what does that mean for me and my role within the practice.
It does, and it's very hard for them too if they don't. I was thinking about a practice this morning that I was working with, and they've got some new admin front office staff starting in January. And we've still got some days that we could open up to new clinicians, expanding the practice. But, we need to make it, for example, this is one thing, that if we start these people at the front office and we train them, and they're there answering the phone beautifully and filling the book and taking the payments, that's all wonderful. But if they don't understand what our overall objective is, which is to get these other couple of surgeries full and get clinicians working in them, because that's really where the creamy part of the practice is going to be once we get to that stage, then they will just keep plodding along with that plan thinking they're doing a wonderful job, which they will be, but they won't realise that we've actually got some further steps we want to take. Whereas if we explain to them what the long-term goals look like, and in the interim, what things do we see need to happen in order to get there, such as, we'd like to see the current schedule booked solidly for a month. When we're lagging a month behind, we know it's time to open up the next one, that kind of strategy. Then they've got something to work with, and they can feel that sense of achievement when they get there, and they're part of that as well. So
it's just so important to understand what the goal is, isn't it? I mean, you and I were talking beforehand, doing some work on a website for something that's completely separate to dental because we've built so many websites in our time. And because it's a completely different area, not being sure of what the ultimate goal is has been one of the areas that's a bit of a hindrance, because you're not quite sure what look are you trying to get to? What's the vibe here? And so understanding what the goal is just so super important. And without that clarity around the goal, we're really cutting out that kind of innovative thinking that team members have, that we all have. That if we think, the only goal is that we get that schedule filled for tomorrow, And that's the goal. That's what I'm working towards. All of my energies and thought processes are around doing that. My mindset is all around that. Whereas if the goal is to be able to give the patient a particular type of experience, to be able to build the reputation of the practice, to be able to have team harmony and fulfillment and my own personal job satisfaction as well thrown into it all, that you've got that much bigger picture in mind, then the way you fill that book is going to be different because you've got broader goals in mind rather than just filling the day.
Yeah, that's right. And it's also just that engagement, that sense of being part of something, giving yourself something to work towards within an organisation. So it makes a big difference. Otherwise, very, very boring.
Yeah, yeah. And to go, with that filling of the book, you can fill the book with a whole bunch of mouthguard impressions. Or you can fill the book with a couple of recalls, a couple of new patients, a couple of crowns, a couple of fillings. They're going to be two wildly different days. One's going to be productive where the other will not. One's going to be highly stressful where the other one will not. And so really understanding those bigger pictures, that, maybe that's a good little analogy for everyone to keep in mind when we're talking about that. So with this podcast episode, we're just talking about what's happened, what's been in 2024, this past year. And it does kind of play into a little bit, what does success look like? Because we can fall into that trap of thinking, well, our turnover, that's the main KPI. It's a very big KPI for sure, a very important one. But if that's bigger than last year, then we've been successful. But there's more to do with success than that as well, isn't it? Isn't there? There's the turnover for sure, but also there's the personal fulfillment that you got from working this past year. Have your team members had happy, fulfilling, productive years as well? And are your patients walking out of the practice still happy and delighted to be part of your, if you like, dental family? So there's more than just finances, isn't there?
Absolutely. And a lot of those will all join up to what the bottom line is going to look like as well. But the turnover thing's a funny thing because people tell me all the time, yeah, I had a great turnover. And it's like, well, what was your profit margin like? And that could be a completely different story. It didn't look good. But yeah, definitely having all those things in order. And I think a really scary place to be is the same place you were last year, in so many ways, not just from a numbers point of view. And we've all made New Year's resolutions at the beginning of January. We've got to December, and I've had years where I really haven't achieved much of what I set out to achieve. And it's so deflating. And this year, for example, I met some of my goals, but not all of them, and not all to the extent that I wanted to, but it's substantial progress nevertheless. So, you feel rewarded and motivated to set new goals moving forward. And I think it's important to remember, as business owners, we want that sort of growth. As working professionals, we want that sort of growth for ourselves and our learning. But we also have to remember that the people within the practice, the support staff, they also need that. And some of them are going to be aware of needing that. And some of them are so young that they're relying on us to show them a way and make them aware of that this stuff's going to be good for them. It's going to give them add enormous value to their lives and all those sorts of things.
For sure. We are such an example to each other within those kind of working environments, just like family members are as well. And if you've got a parent that freaks out and goes nuts every time something goes wrong, even if it's a minor thing that's going wrong, one of the things that I think about is, building up to Christmas time, you're having all the family and friends over for a Christmas function, and we are racing around the house doing the spring cleaning, making sure everything is perfect. And we're in such a space of that when a child then accidentally knocks over a vase, you go more nuts about it. Rather than if it had happened 2 weeks prior. And I think this is part of it too, because you're right. I think that a lot of people do establish goals for themselves within the practice as the year unfolds, because we can't control everything that's going to happen throughout that year. Some goals we meet and some goals we don't meet. And it's our response to that that is then an example to the rest of the team as well, and can contribute towards a more stressful environment or a less stressful environment. And just yesterday, I heard someone that I respect highly say, he was asked the question, what wins have you had this past year? And he said, it's interesting, I haven't had a lot of wins, but it's been one of the most successful years of my life. And it is about what meaning that we draw from these sort of things. With this website thing, I was talking to you about this earlier, that it's, I'm so used to communicating with the lovely people like yourself, Ameena, who communicate really effectively, and I know exactly what you're talking about. If I ask for clarification, you provide it. And this other space, it's a bit more challenging in terms of communication, and I could look at that and either get really frustrated at each communication, or I look at that as an opportunity to become a better communicator myself, to be able to, despite it being more challenging, I still have thought of workarounds and start getting a more effective communication going. And so when we're not reaching the goals that we had set out at the start of the year, there could be a vast different array of reasons behind that. And failure is only one reason around that. Yet if we manage and respond to not meeting those goals as if it's a failure, then how is that impacting the rest of the team members? Is it making them feel less motivated, less enthusiastic, downtrodden, God, I need that holiday? Or is it making them say, gosh, this is someone that can adapt and place a different meaning and find an opportunity out of everything? Because one of the reasons why we don't achieve goals is because number one, it could be because you just didn't perform well. You didn't do the actions that you were supposed to do, and it really is squarely on our shoulders. And so, okay, I failed. I failed to take the actions in order for me to roll out the strategies that were going to get me to that goal. That's one reason. Another reason is because things happened within that year that were unexpected and I didn't take into consideration because I couldn't foresee that these things were going to happen. And so that's the reason why some of these goals weren't met. But another reason could be because my goals changed throughout the year and that the original ones weren't actually relevant to me anymore.
That's right. And they can change throughout the year. And the same, for the staff members as well. I find if we know what their goals are within the workplace, because just quietly they might be thinking, I'd really like to get out of the surgery and onto the front desk and all these sorts of things. And if we dig and we find out what their goals are, then quite possibly we can support them and accommodate them on that path. And that's going to leave us with a much more engaged, excited, motivated team.
That's for sure. And I've got one practice in mind that one of the team members really enjoys all the lab work side of things. And so they were hoping to be able to, never spoke this out of their own mouth, but gee, I wonder if I could be given more of the lab work stuff. We send less lab work out. I get trained in how to do it and I do it, and then I'm more fulfilled in my role. If a team member comes to a practice owner with that request, there's two ways that it could be managed, and you can see them both roll out. Number one is, but we need you as a dental assistant. That can't happen. This is an interruption. Gosh, now are you unhappy now and you're not going to be satisfied anymore? And goodness me, this is a stress. Or why? That could be an opportunity for the practice. Let's look at what our lab bill is. Let's see how much money we can save by you doing that work instead. And then we employ another dental assistant to be able to support the role. And let's see if this can be an opportunity where the practice actually does win out and it ends up being that win-win.
And other people in the practice usually have got things to offer from such a different perspective. So valuable to listen to all of that.
Yeah, that's right. And I can't remember why this has popped into my head. It popped into my head yesterday. I must have heard this when I wasn't listening properly to a podcast or something like that. But just that sometimes we don't always, depending on our age, our level of confidence, we don't always offer up, what about us take this path? What about if I contribute to the dental practice in this way? And a lot of people are quiet about that because they don't want to be shut down. They don't want to speak out of turn. They don't want to seem like they're demanding. They don't want to change the happy space that relationships that they've achieved to date. But they actually have got a lot of great ideas of how things can change within the dental practice to impact more positively on the team, the patient, the turnover. But for whatever reason, they're not raising it up. And maybe that's one of the things that we can identify moving forward. Well, I wonder if there is any of that brilliance going on in the dental team members' minds, and how to create the environment where it's safe to actually say those sort of things as well.
And if you're moving through this space over the coming Christmas break, New Year's break, contemplating your goals for next year and how you want to go about it, or what 2025 looks like to you, it's really important to share that with everybody in the practice, and get their insights and contributions, because they could make it bigger and better, possibly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good exercise to do when you get back into the clinic in the new year.
That's it. So, Ameena, you and I are going to cast our minds back to when we were managing dental practices, the ones that we were working at full time. And when we would reflect back over a previous year, what would we be looking for? And of course, that number one thing is turnover. How did our turnover impact, or how did it compare to previous years and compare to the goals that we were trying to achieve? Obviously, with turnover goals, we want to look at those goals more than just once a year. We need to know if we're on the mark every week, every month as we move forward. But turnover is the big, obvious one. That's certainly the one the accountant's going to look at as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, particularly through growth stages, we can often start spending on new equipment, on extra staff and all those things. So sometimes I've had higher turnover and the profit margin really hasn't changed that much because of all the extra expenditure. So I think reviewing, your profit and loss, ideally, if you've got an accountant who's on top of things, ideally every 3 months, because it sort of gets away on you otherwise.
And I think too, you're right. Don't just look at the turnover. Look at your profit margin as well, because that needs to be consistent with it. And if the profit margin has gone down, there may be good reasons, such as new purchase of equipment, etc. But there's other areas that can start to impact on that as well. So also look at the amount that you're discounting, because you've always said that's one area that all of a sudden it can blow out without you really truly realizing the end impact of that.
Yeah, the consumables and the ordering management can start to blow out, all these sorts of things. And when we review this frequently, we can identify these things before it becomes, a big deal.
Yeah. And so maybe that's it. Look at your turnover, but then also look at the percentage spend on all of your main expenses, such as wages, consumables, lab, all those things, to make sure that your spend hasn't gotten out of, because we do this in our home lives too, don't we? We get more income coming in. We're like, you beauty, it's lobster for dinner.
That's right.
And so do make sure that, it may impact your sense of control that you would normally have over budgets. And so look at that aspect as well. So that's your turnover. Have you stuck to your budgets throughout the year? So the percentage of turnover that you've allocated to these main expenses and to your profit margin as well. The other element that's a good idea to look at is the efficiency and productivity of the appointment book. Our dental software systems now are magnificent. Like back in the day when it was handwritten, of course, we didn't get the chance to do this, but nowadays we do. We can see how much time were we here, ready to see a patient, but for whatever reason, a failed to attend, a late cancellation, just not booked in. The time was never booked in with a patient. How much time didn't we get to see a patient? And then what was the financial impact on that? So it's a little bit more of looking at the turnover, but what could it have been if we had tighter systems in certain other areas as well?
Yeah, that's right. So I think just reviewing all of these things, getting all your goals down on paper, so it's like we almost concrete them in our brain when we write them down, and then reviewing, how we're going to go about achieving some of these things this year.
Yeah, and if you're tracking KPIs every month, this helps enormously, because then at the end of the year, you're looking at a snapshot of your whole year. And because you've assessed it every month moving forward, your mind really is attuned to seeing patterns and opportunities for improvement, etc. And so do gather all of your KPI reports for the past year and have a look through and see if there is anything that's jumping out at you. If there are areas where you go, gosh, we implemented that system around managing late cancellations, for example, or we employed a steri nurse and so the surgery changeover times was more efficient. You can start to see the impact of these decisions, and you can start to see, gosh, we've got to really make sure we keep these things going because they've worked really well. That's helped our turnover, that's helped our results of our KPIs, it's helped our profit margin. And, stress is another big one. We'll talk about team in a minute, but we can, if we just structure things to be as productive as possible, quite often that means that we're seeing too many patients in too short a period of time. We're rushed, and then the team members are stressed out. So that's not a solution. And so we need to be able to have that big, broader picture in mind, that it needs to work well for the business. It also needs to work well with the team members. It also needs to work well for the patients as well. And then you've got a sound system if you've taken all of these three areas into consideration. But you can also, through that general assessing of KPIs and that yearly snapshot that you have a look at everything, you can also see areas for improvement. One of the big ones is we're discounting too much, so let's rein that in a little bit. Another one that we just mentioned was there was too much downtime. We've got to think of different ways of managing the downtime because we were losing tens of thousands of dollars by the end of the year in that sort of downtime as well. And also, the spending. We've got to keep to our budgets far more effectively in the coming year. And as we're going to talk about with each of these areas that we're going to look at in terms of what year did we have in 2024, we've also got to get all that information, go, so therefore what different actions am I going to take, or that are we going to take moving forward into 2025 so these things aren't as big of an issue, which we'll be covering in a future podcast episode. Let's talk about team. How did you used to reflect back over how the team were for the past year? Was it conversations, surveys, just the general vibe that you got, Meenie?
Well, I always used to do team surveys. I conduct those a couple of times a year. But I think the thing that would most stand out is if you had a lot of staff turnover in any given period. And it's just so much work, and it is so disruptive to a practice that when you could get that all happening really, really well, it makes life so much easier in the dental practice when you've got a stable, efficient, productive team. So I think having goals around how to make sure that you're keeping the staff happy and engaged and motivated and all those sorts of things, providing them with, great training, regular performance reviews and HR processes so they haven't got things to be ticked off about. And really, putting your people first, making sure you look after them is super, super important. But reviewing the processes every year around the HR matters and how you manage all of that, recruitment and so forth, should be very high on the list of priorities.
Yeah, and don't think just the behaviour that they're exhibiting to you is actually what's going on in their minds. Quite often just asking that direct question, either through a survey or it could be through a team meeting, like more of a brainstorming session. Let's talk about what's worked well over this past year, what helped make us efficient, productive, but also happy in this work environment, what could have been done that would have added to that, and just getting the thoughts from people's minds out of their mouth in a safe environment where they're not going to bear any cost to that, is such an important step, isn't it? Because we can just think, oh, everything's coming along nicely, la-di-da-di-da. How often do you hear of couples breaking up? One spouse leaves the other and the spouse that's left behind says, I thought we were going great. But obviously there was a lot of stuff going on in the other spouse's mind that you just didn't even know about. And so create that environment where you can actually get this information out into the open. And the only way you're going to be able to do that successfully is that there really is no cost to that. That, that someone can say something and it can be harsh, but that they can say, you're a terrible leader and that's why I've been unhappy. But they don't get any sort of passive aggressive, emotional cost to them whatsoever. And that's an environment you need to foster. You can't just say in one breath, you're safe to be open with me and have everyone respond in kind. They need to have evidence of that, build a trustworthiness around that over a period of time for that kind of level of openness to be happening. So one of the things that's a good idea is to do a survey and have it anonymous. So you're not going to ask people, who responded back that it is anonymous. And there's a great survey that Charles told me about, and it's called the Gallup Staff Survey, or Gallup Team. It's GALLUP. But it's got some really terrific questions, and you can gather a lot of information from that. But one of the most important questions you could ask your team members is, what can we do as a dental practice, as a practice manager, a practice owner, what can we do in 2025 that will help you be happier at the end of next year than you were this year? What can we do? And they'll be able to suggest a whole bunch of information. And it's a bit more of a better question. It's less loaded than what did we do wrong in 2024? And so from the team harmony stuff, the discovery really is finding out the goal that your dental team members have in their minds and creating that environment for them to be open around that. One of the kind of things that made me feel really quite excited and motivated, I used to work at a dental practice, and we used to have the Christmas lunch at a restaurant, nice restaurant, but every year the owner would stand up and deliver a speech, and part of that speech was, this is why I'm excited about next year. And this is where they talk about the goals and the aspirations for the coming year. It wasn't just financial. It was, I'm going to do this course and we're going to bring in this service, or we're going to do this and that. And it was always something that I found very motivational. Did you have those sort of conversations with team members and bosses back in your day?
Yeah, absolutely. Just so important to get the insights from everybody around you.
And to have those goals kind of announced to everybody. So as you say, we know what path we're on. We know what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, everyone's then on the same page and can work towards the bigger picture.
Yeah. Another aspect to reflect upon over the previous year, and we always have two questions in mind: what worked well and what could be improved upon. And we really want to make sure the stuff that worked well, is it systematized? Do we have good systems around that so it does continue to work well? Like, we stuck to our budgets, and so that worked well for us from a productivity perspective or a profit margin perspective. And so let's make sure that that's going to be replicated again next year. And the minute we want to have something replicated, that means we need a system in place to be able to do that this is what happens. And that way we can more guarantee that that's going to be an outcome. The aspect of and what could be improved upon, this is where we can have a range of different ideas of how a particular thing could be improved upon. And usually, not usually, I shouldn't say that, every now and again you and I come across practices that have a high cancellation rate, for example, like cancellation rate of patients. And the solution to that by the practice owner is to tell the receptionist, just don't let them cancel. But that's a difficult ask, because it's actually more encompassing than that. And so with these sort of situations, if you have identified something within your practice that you think that could be improved upon, we can find solutions around that, gather the team together and get a whole bunch of different conversations happening around it, because it's more than just do better. Just do better is very defeatist. It means none of us have been trained in any additional way. We've got no additional thoughts going on. We're just expected to magically make this better. And it needs a different approach. Doing the same thing over and again, expecting a different outcome, is insanity. And so we can't just do better. We have to figure out, what does that look like? How are we going to do things differently in order to do better? And group discussion is a fantastic way around this. And it brings me to the my mind of Ortal Green. Ortal Green and I've got her book right here.
Glittering Minds.
Yeah, Glittering Minds. That's what I was trying to think of, what her business name was, Glittering Minds. And it is recognizing that with your brainstorming sessions around something like this, what usually does happen is we go, okay, we're going to find solutions around late cancellations. And then someone says, oh, we've got to confirm them more often. And then somebody else says, oh, no, that won't work because of this. Okay, well, what if we do this? No, that won't work because of this. And we are doing it wrong. And the creative part of our brain and the analytical part of our brain are separate. And so we need to be able to first come up with all the ideas in the world that we can come up with on how to tackle a particular problem without judging whether they're good ideas or not, without finding reasons why it wouldn't work here at this practice. And then after we've got all those great ideas, then we go through them one at a time and analyze which ones we're going to try to implement. Because otherwise, if you're a team member and you see one or two ideas get shot down, are you going to offer anything yourself? No, it's going to be shot down as well. And there's always those team members as well that will just shoot down anything. You know, we always need those sort of people that go, but this is the reason why it won't work. It's just not the time for it in that moment. Get all the ideas going first, and then analyze after the fact. But definitely don't just tell somebody, just get a better result, without encouraging them, enlightening them, discussing with them how we're going to approach things differently in order to get a better result.
Yeah, it's really unfair to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So the business side also kind of encompasses systems as well, and this is where you are identifying what worked well and what didn't work well. So sisters, do have a contemplation over this Christmas period of how are our systems working. So the big main systems, really, we've got to make sure that we're sticking to budgets and that we're tracking key performance indicators and managing the appointment book well. But this leads us into the patient experience. If we don't get the patient experience right, we will fail. We will
Absolutely.
slowly go down the gurgler. And everything that we do is all around the patient satisfaction, the care of the patient, etc. And so that's another area where we can assess what did we achieve in 2024? How were we rolling out our service to our patients in 2024? One of the great ways of doing that is to survey a handful of those patients. You can either survey everybody, or you can select the patients that you want to survey. We want to find out if our loyal patients that we love seeing, that they're the type of the patients that love our services and they come back every 6 months, are we meeting their expectations? And surveying patients can be a fantastic way of doing that.
I had a girlfriend ring me the other day. She had been to the dentist and she called me and said that it was so uncomfortable seeing the hygienist that she was jumping around in the chair. She goes, I can't even believe that she was happy to keep going because it took forever. I must have been driving her mad. And she never spoke to anybody about it. She just left and she has no intentions of ever going back. And I encouraged her to call the practice and speak with them and let them know because she's a business owner too, we want to know these things. Otherwise, things are going to go pretty shady pretty quickly. And, explain to her that it should absolutely not be an experience like that, seeing a hygienist. So that's just an example of things that could happen in your practice that you'd not be aware of if you were not to survey the patients or ask the patients.
Yeah, and don't use as an indicator of patient satisfaction the number of complaints you get. Because obviously not everyone complains, but they have got a problem with the way you're delivering your service. Again, back to that married couple where one spouse leaves the other. If they were using the lack of complaints as an indicator of how successful their marriage was, it wasn't working because that person left without telling you about the reasons why until the very end. And the patient satisfaction, it's just so easy for us to get into the routine of every day. And all of a sudden efficiency becomes the priority, or productivity becomes the priority, whereas for the patient, their level of satisfaction comes when their level of satisfaction comes as first priority. And I'm just going to remind myself of a fantastic quote I saw, and I shared it on Facebook yesterday. And it's such a great quote because it works with, and I think it was originally sent out as a leadership quote. But I thought it's just so perfect for a patient service quote as well. So think of this in terms of a patient as a manager who is, in charge of managing a group of people, and a leader as well. You are the most important part of my job. You are not an interruption in my work. You are the purpose of it. I am not doing you a favor by helping you. You are doing me a favor by giving me an opportunity to do so. And it really does help us get back to that mindset of, the patient's the most important person. And for managers of people, when team members come to them for assistance, you and I speak about this to our students all the time in the practice managers course, that you can go, I'm too busy to deal with these people. Why do they keep coming to me with all their problems? That's the job. That's the purpose of you being there. And so it does shift your mindset from resisting the additional needs that the patient wants. Oh, this is an anxious one that we need to really carry them through this appointment time, or that particular team member's unhappy because of something and now I can't get my other important tasks done, like the KPIs. And it can help, it shifts us from resisting those people to embracing them, because that's the whole reason I'm here. So the kind of fourth element, so we're looking at the business itself, all the financial side of things and the KPIs and blah, blah, blah. We're looking at that side of things. We're looking at the team members, the team level member of happiness and harmony and things. We're looking at the systems, what systems have been working well, what systems can be refined or introduced to help us achieve all our goals in the coming year. And the fourth element is self, like our own personal level of fulfillment, just like that quote I said to you before, that I haven't had any wins this year, but I've had the most successful year that I've had. And this is where you yourself, we attach different meanings to the things that happen throughout the year. You can look at a team member leaving and go, the year was hard because we had a couple of team members leave and that was very disruptive. Or you can look at the year and go, well, a couple of people left and then we've got these new couple of people and they're fantastic. And so that's been great. That was a great event that happened. And we can fall into that trap of, and it's that Tony Robbins quote, the universe is working against me or the universe is working for me. And we can look at the disruptions that happen within the year. And depending on the meaning that we attach to those disruptions, at the end of the year, we either feel depleted from the year or fulfilled from the year. And it is about the meaning that we attach to these things.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one that I shared on Facebook too about, we have the same mindset, we'll have the same habits, and then we'll have the same results. And if we have a new mindset, we'll have new habits and therefore new results.
Yeah, that's it. And mindset can be one of those things that you think, that's what I'm going to do differently in 2025. That if you answered the question of, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being distraught by the year, 10 being completely elated by the year, if you are not at 7, 8, 9, 10 of that scale, then maybe it's your response to the perceived disruptions throughout the year that needs to change. And one of the things that, again, on social media, it's so much a part of so many lives, but it does come up with golden bits every now and again. There was a video meme that went out and it was just so beautiful. And it's somebody looking through God's plan for their life. They've got a chance to read through God's plan for their life. And so they're reading through and they're like, okay, and they get to a page and they read a section of it and they're distraught. Why? Why would you do this to me? This is terrible. Oh, my God, this is awful. Why? Oh, my gosh. Oh, they keep clicking through the pages. Oh, that's why. That's why. And so having that as part of a mindset, that is part of the world's working for me, the universe is working for me and not against me, is that you don't always see the reasons why things are disruptive in the here and now. So you just get frustrated with it. But recognizing there is a larger plan at play. We don't have all the answers about why certain experiences are thrown in front of us, but just having the faith that this too is working for me. It may be revealed later on. It may not be revealed later on, but quite often it is revealed later on why this is a good thing. And I think losing a key team member can be one of those situations where it just feels painful in the moment. But then you get another great team member and you're like, oh, no, this is good. This actually worked out pretty well.
You know how many times practices are distressed about losing a certain team member that they've had forever and all those things, and so scared about the whole thing. And often when the new person comes along, they're quite happy. So, yeah, that is one very common example.
Yeah, that's it. So a question you could ask about the previous year when you're thinking about and considering your own level of fulfillment is, if you are not feeling terribly fulfilled by the year, and if you're feeling disappointed by the year or frustrated by the year or depleted by the year, then think to yourself, well, if I was the kind of person that was to feel completely fulfilled by my year, yet all the events of the previous year I can't change, yet I feel fulfilled rather than distraught by it, what would I need to think about the year in order to feel fulfilled? Because we all know that feeling positive, optimistic, happy about life means that we have happier lives. And we know that we don't always control the situations around us. All we've got to do is control, or the only thing we've got to control is how we respond to those things. Yet it seems to be a difficult step to shift the way we respond, because we're so much in the habit or the groove of responding in a way of woe is me, or poor me, or why did this happen? This has been put upon me. This is a challenge, rather than it is possibly an opportunity, or despite this happening, I'm so grateful for all the other things around me that this is no longer deemed to be an importantly negative thing in my world. So really recognizing if my current response to the year has made me feel depleted, then what can I do for the coming year when things will inevitably happen, because nothing ever runs smoothly. Life is ups and downs and roundabouts. What would I need to change in terms of the meaning I attach to things in order to get to the end of the year of 2025 and actually feel pretty fulfilled?
And it's the whole nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you're just going to go back and do all the same things that you did last year, you're probably not going to have much different result at the end of the year. So,
exactly. That's exactly right.
Julie and I at Dental Business Mastery have loads of resources. We have annual growth plans. We have lots of things that can help you in this space. If you do need some assistance moving forward, you can reach out even over the holiday period via email if you like. And we're certainly happy to help you with that.
For sure. And we have got we just created a landing page that on our website that talks about how to recruit differently, how to do things differently, actions you can take to hopefully tap into more people who will be able to come into your dental practice, because recruitment has been a huge challenge for the auxiliary positions over the past years. And so if you're interested in that, that might be something that can help you in the coming year of 2025 as well. Well, thanks, Ameena. Hopefully this has been a helpful episode to get everyone's minds around, what do I think about? What am I supposed to do when it comes to assessing my previous year? And that question of where have we been? Next week, we're going to be talking about where are we going?
Beautiful.
See you next time.
See you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then I encourage you to head over to Ameena and my website, dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. You will find all the information that you need if you would like to gain our assistance in helping you and your team achieve great success. If you would like to find out more, you can also email us directly at info@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. Thanks so much for listening.